want to talk about tonight is different ways that people think. And by the way, Steven Spielberg is one of the other inductees. And I had a chance to talk to him last night, and I wanted to ask him if it was really true that he snuck into Universal Studios. Yes, it is. He had dyslexia. The film schools didn't think he had any talent. So he went on the tour bus. When they had a bathroom break, he hid in the bathroom. I'm not kidding. So we talked about last night. He hid, and then the school bus left him inside Universal Studios. And then he started talking to people. Then he got some gate passes. Then he made friends with the security guards. And he made his own internship in there. It was basically finding back doors. This is something I did in my career too. In the HBO movie, there's a scene where I get the editor's card. The editor of our State Farm magazine was at a small kennel event. I go up and I get his card. That was very important for getting my career started. That press pass got me into all sorts of things. I also made myself good at what I did, that I would cover meetings very accurately. Now this is kind of hard right here. I would have to turn around and see the slides. Maybe we'll just forget about the slides. All right, I think we might just do that. It's too hard for me to turn around and look at them. And let's just start out with my childhood. I had no speech till age 4. I was very lucky to get into a really good early intervention program. The 2 teachers taught out of their house. As I travel around the country, I'm seeing many situations where little 3-year-olds who are not talking are on 2-year wait lists. This is absolutely unconscionable. But what do we do in some of these low-income communities? Let's tap into us retirees. We are half the national budget. And I'm 78 years old, I still work. I gotta get up early at 5:30 tomorrow to get on a plane back home, then turn around and go to Memphis on Wednesday. I'm trying to get an academic paper written. Did a little bit of work on that in Washington, D.C. But maybe get some retired teachers to come in and work with these 3-year-olds. We've got to do something. Maybe we're going to call it library play for legal reasons. We can't say we're doing therapy even though we are. Maybe community center play. You know, something like that. We got to work with these kids. Now, my mother had high expectations, but with some accommodations. One of the big problems I'm seeing is too many moms baby the kids too much. And I have a book out there on the book stand. We will be selling books afterwards. A book called The Loving Push. So I couldn't stand the noise of a horn on a ferry when we went on vacation. Well, we're going to go on that ferry, but we made an accommodation. I rode in the cabin underneath the deck. They didn't make me just stay there on top of the horn. And when we went to my grandmother's house for Sunday dinner, I was allowed to run up and down the stairs. Beat the elevator, always beat the elevator. Another house, there was a big long corridor I could run in. So there were some accommodations so we could do family dinners without me completely trashing them. Let's just give you a few little hints about sensory. Let's say a child hates a hairdryer or a vacuum cleaner. Let the kid turn the noisy thing on. Because when they turn the noisy thing on, I've seen vacuum cleaners turn into the most favorite toy. Because then you no longer have the startle effect from it. Also, if you wear headphones all the time, it's going to make sound sensitivity worse. Have them with you all the time. So if the fire alarm goes off, or there's some other dreadful noise, they can put it on for that. But don't wear them all the time. So that's some things that can help with sensory. Sensory issues are real. They would be my top area of research. You know, they do a lot of research describing how the fear circuits in the brain light up, but they don't tell you how to treat. There is an interesting paper you might want to get. It's called Environmental Enrichment. It's an effective treatment for autism. Now, this does not replace speech therapy and other therapies, but it's a method to desensitize. So it might hold a cold water glass and at the same time smell peppermint, where you're stimulating across the senses. It is an evidence-based paper. The title is Environmental Enrichment is an effective treatment for autism. 3 keywords, you can find it on Google. Autism, environmental enrichment. I recommend looking that up. Now, another thing I really like to talk about is different ways that people think. In my book, Thinking in Pictures, I discussed that all of my thoughts are in pictures. Now, I thought everybody thought in pictures. I didn't realize until I was in my late 30s that other people thought in words. I do a lot of talks to businesses, and I said the first step is understanding people think differently, and they can have complementary skills. I am what's called, scientifically, an object visualizer. Everything I think about is a picture. Now, object visualizers are really good at mechanical things, art, photography, and animal behavior. I'm seeing too many smart kids getting addicted to video games. Here's a way to get them off. Auto mechanics. And it has been successful. And they find out motors are a lot more interesting than stupid video games. But the problem we've got with the object visualizers is they can't do algebra. I failed the SATs in math. But I designed the front end of every Cargill beef plant in North America. And I do have I've got a couple of copies of my cattle handling book out there that got some of my drawings, and I worked with people that owned machine shops that were autistic. They had a patent portfolio of 20 patents, all mechanical things. One of the worst things the schools ever did was taking out the shop classes. Because this smart person who's weird who can fix anything in a factory, they are not getting replaced. I just read an Aviation Week, that's my fun magazine. It wasn't fun reading the major airlines complaining that the young mechanics had no mechanical skills. I had a chance to sit next to a veteran who failed the college because he couldn't do algebra, but she aced the military's mechanical test. They basically said to her, you can fix that airplane over there, with that one there, with that one there. You're fixing airplanes. Yeah, fixing hydraulics doesn't require any math. It requires visualizing a system. Now, your other kind of thinking, and autism also have a mathematical mind. Patterns. Music and math go together, and art and mechanical go together. And then a third type, I call it a word fact mind. This is the guy that works in the auto parts store, and he can memorize every single part and find it. Also very good at specialized retail, selling cars, selling business insurance, and help people get the right product. Not the most expensive product, but the right product. Now, most people are mixtures of the different kinds of thinking, but you can get an autistic extreme object visualizer like me, that probably couldn't graduate from high school with A, because you can't do algebra. Now, the kind of math I need to be taking is things like sizing hydraulic cylinders. How many trucks and concrete do I need to fill these concrete forms? That's the kind of math that I should be taking. And this is what I wrote about in my visual thinking book, because I'm very concerned that some of these minds are getting screened out, and we need them. Now, the other big thing, where things are bad in a lot of places, is I'm seeing kids excel in academics, but they did not learn any job skills. Well, I was doing chores as a little kid. It's official now, Bill Gates is on the spectrum. And both Bill Gates and I, when we were 9, we sold candy and other things for charity. That taught you how to talk to people. The other thing that we did, it was a real 1950s thing, is we had to be hosts and hostesses at parents' parties. And you had to greet the people, take their jackets. These are things that low-income families can do. I have grandparents come up to me all the time. And then when they discover they're autistic, when the grandkids get diagnosed, they'll have paper routes. They learn how to work. Paper routes are gone. What we can do is make paper route substitutes. This needs to start at 11. Walking the neighbor's dog. Doing a task for somebody outside the family. A volunteer job at the synagogue. Something where a person outside the family is the boss, and it's on a regular schedule. That needs to start at 11. Isn't illegal, they need to be getting real jobs. And let's just talk about a few accommodations. I basically need external working memory. I cannot remember long strings of verbal information. Let's say cleaning an ice cream machine. I need to make a pilot's checklist. Tear down steps, cleaning steps, reassembly steps. Yeah, teach them how to make pilot's checklists for things. That would save a lot of jobs. It's a very, very simple accommodation. See you nodding your head there. It's a very simple accommodation that would save a lot of jobs. When I was 13, Mother found me a little sewing job in the neighborhood. There was a seamstress that altered dresses out of her home. I took apart garments and I hand-hemmed them. And I was a terrible student in high school. I got kicked out of regular school. I beat a girl in the head with a social studies book after she called me a retard. And ended up going to special school. They put me to work cleaning 9 stalls every day. I basically ran the school's horse barn. I learned how to work. Also, horses gave me friends who shared interests. This is a place where autistics can get a lot of good things happening. Friends through shared interests. Now let's talk about special interests. To get special interests, you have to be exposed to things. And my interest in cattle and horses started in high school, because that's when I was exposed to them. Also in the HBO movie, it showed my interest in optical illusion rooms, and it showed the actual science movie from Bell Labs, where I saw these optical illusion rooms. You got to show individuals interesting things to get them interested. Okay, the video game addicts, we started showing them auto mechanics. Then they finally developed an interest in that. You know, if you don't show people interesting things, then how can they get interested in interesting things? Also, I want to kind of encourage to be an entrepreneur. When I was in high school, I had a little sign painting business. And I had to make signs that people wanted. And my first paid sign was for a hair salon, so I put the Breck lady on it. The Breck shampoo lady. I didn't worry about copyright violation. I didn't know about that. But I didn't decorate it with horses, because I didn't think a hair salon would want flying saucers with horses on it. Now the other thing is learning to drive. I learned on my aunt's range, and for the ones that are capable of learning to drive, it's going to take a whole lot longer. Much more practice in a totally safe place, like a stadium parking lot that's deserted. I was on dirt roads going to my aunt's mailbox for over a month before we did any traffic. Yeah, we've got to have much more practice, because what you got to do is you've got to get the operation of that vehicle into motor memory before we touch any traffic. And that solves the problem with multitasking. And one of the things is I travel around, there's a lot of good programs. I was horrified to find out there's some coffee shop program. They're charging people $500,000 for getting it. Oh, that's disgusting. But I have talked to people that have opened restaurants, theaters, and other really good things for individuals very much like your clients. And one of the big problems they've been running into is transportation. Going broke on Ubers. They're out in more rural areas. Okay, if you're in the city here, you have buses. Well, they don't have buses to get them out there. But that's been the thing that's been a problem. It's been the transportation. We need to get the attitude of what a person can do. Everybody thought I was stupid. And it's too difficult for me to try to turn around and watch these slides, and the clickers didn't seem to work. But the way I got started on my cattle handling design, it was sort of an extension of my sign painting. I showed people portfolios of my work. I showed them drawings. I showed them pictures of jobs. Did the same thing with signs. I simply showed off my work. Then I would get a job, and then I wrote about it. And you're doing some very innovative things here at ZABS Place. You need to write a book explaining how to do it. Because the other thing I did to make changes in cattle handling was when the internet started, I put a website up that it's got a lot of stuff that's in my cattle books is on the internet for free. Let it go. I had DVDs out there. There are a lot of different things out there. You need to explain how you make this work, mistakes not to make, how did you correct the mistakes? Because one of the things that made me effective in cattle handling was all the writing I did. I wrote a lot of articles in the cattle magazines. Okay, here's a drawing for a corral. This is how you do things. There's a lot of innovative good stuff out there that gets lost because it's not written up. And that's what you need to get what you're doing here written up, because it's going beyond a lot of the other stuff that I've been seeing. That's what you need to be doing. I think what I'll do right now is we'll just get a lot of questions going. That's what we're going to get doing. And I saw you there, Nani, having the silver outfit on, a beautiful silver outfit. And I tend to look at right things. Maybe you have a question. Do they have a mic to pass around? Oh, you've got a mic to pass around. Okay.
Hi, I'm a special ed teacher for high school, and we have several situations where it's students with autism, but they also have mental health challenges. And after they turn 18, there's not a lot of support for them. Either it's mental health or it's autism, but it doesn't come together. So I was just wondering if you've come across any resources that could be helpful for these families.
We're going to have to tap into our retirees. We're fully funded. We're half the national budget. Let's tap into a retired mechanic to teach some kids how to do mechanics. There's a lot more resources than you think. I was at a veterinary tech class, and this veterinary tech was in a real low-income high school, and she started Future Farmers of America chapter. They had one resource in their neighborhood, a cat rescue of all things. They teamed up with the cat rescue and made a really good program. That was a resource in their neighborhood. We also have got to be emphasizing learning word skills and life skills way before they graduate from high school. I'm appalled at the amount of 16-year-olds I'm finding. They come to me at the airport. I find out they've never shopped by themselves. And the moms hold on to it. They do everything for them. This is coming up over and over and over again. A month ago, I just heard a real horror story about 3 boys, born 2 years apart, all graduated from college, now in the basement playing video games. Never learned one word skill. I heard that a month ago. This is stuff going on right now. And I have problems with parents that can't let go. And they're not learning the most basic life skills. Never shopped in a store. I had one mom admit that she couldn't let go. We gotta be doing this in high school. Before they graduate from high school, they need to have work experience. They gotta learn life skills. When I went away to the special school, I didn't do any academics. They made me attend class. Recluse in the room wasn't allowed. And mother was worried I wasn't doing my academics. And Mr. Payton, the headmaster, said, let her get through her adolescence. But you know what? I learned how to work. I cleaned 9 stalls every day. And then I went home for Christmas vacation for 4 days and come back and there was a foot deep of frozen horse snow up the stalls. I was not very happy about that. It was in New Hampshire. But I learned working skills early. So did Bill Gates. So did a lot of other successful people. You always want slow transitions. Because what's happening with a lot of these high school kids, at 18 it's like jumping off a cliff. They never worked. No, we need to be changing that. Okay, let's get somebody else to ask a question.
Hello. Dr. Grandin. Hello.
I can't tell where you're at. Okay, right there. Okay, so I can't tell what sound's coming from.
Sure. So I'm a big fan of a lot of your books, but I'm also wondering if there are any books that you've read recently or other books that you recommend for us.
Well, I think the ones people that don't speak, there are some people that don't speak. They can learn to type independently. And I mean totally independently. Where you don't touch the thing they type on, or the letterboard, you don't touch that, you don't touch the person, because of cueing. There's a book called How Can I Talk If My Lips Don't Move by Tito Mukapadahe. He types totally independently. I visited with him in a medical library. He comes in flapping all around, running all around. And he had a little keyboard thing he typed on. And his mom says, well, let's talk about autism. I go, no. We're going to talk about something brand new. So I reached into a big pile of Scientific Americans that were in the library. I found a picture, really weird picture, of an astronaut wearing a spacesuit with a big bubble helmet, riding a horse in the desert, of all things. And I put it in front of Tito and said, tell me about this picture. And he typed super fast, Apollo 11 on a horse. There was no way it was cute. Nobody was touching him. The computer stayed on the desk, nobody touched that. And he, some of them can learn to do that. But they have to be able to do it with nobody touching them or whatever thing they type on. We have to start looking at what people can do. And I was at a conference in Canada, and Tito couldn't come to Canada because he's Indian, from India. and he didn't have the right documents to come to Canada. So he was on a video conference. And I asked him at the video conference in front of his big autism meeting, what was it like before you had typing? And he said, emptiness. Yeah. That's not the sort of remark that would be cued. No, but it gets into looking, what I like here is looking at what they can do. So we need to be doing. Everyone thought I was stupid and account to nothing. Steven Spielberg was treated like he was stupid. You know, we both had the guts to do. I went up and I got the card. I don't know if you imagine, the best movie director ever made, and he hid in a toilet stall to sneak into Universal Studios when he was 17 years old. You know, I learned that last night. All right, ladies, somebody's got a question right here. I can see you right there. Oh, good, you're going to get a mic. That's just great.
I'm interested in what interventions you got at 3 years old. You said you had interventions.
You said he's 3 years old.
You said you had interventions.
Well, I got into good early intervention at 2.5. We have got to get into these kids early. Because I'm traveling around just this year, the last 12 months, I've run into 6 different states where 3-year-olds with no speech are on 2-year wait lists. Developmentally, that's absolutely unconscionable. We have to do something about it. Then we're going to start some library play.
So what I want to know is what kind of intervention did you receive? And do we have any of those kind of interventions still going on today? And what interventions today are not really worthwhile?
Okay, I'm having a hard time hearing you. You may have to come up and just talk to me right here. You have some auditory processing problem. Let me just talk to you without the mic right up here. Then I may be able to hear you. Okay. Okay. I have very severe symptoms of autism. I was taken into a neurologist. You see, I was born in 1947. Most doctors didn't know what autism was. So mother took me to a neurologist who checked me for epilepsy. That was negative. Made sure I wasn't deaf. You gotta make sure these kids are not deaf. She referred my mother to a little house where 2 teachers worked in the basement. And I was in that program at 2.5. There were like 6 kids in the class. There were a couple of Down syndrome kids in the class and some other kids. And they basically worked on 3 things. Speech therapy. My speech teacher would slow down when she talked to me. Because when the grown-ups talk super fast, they're like, blah, 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 blah. Slow down. The other thing you need to do is wait for the kid to respond. They're like a slow computer. You gotta give them time to respond. So we worked on language. The other thing we worked on was turn-taking in games. All kinds of little games. I had to learn how to wait and take my turn. That's really important. And then skills, brushing my teeth, using a spoon, you know, just basic skills. Those are the things that we worked on. And you know, it's the same thing that good teachers do today. We call stuff by different names, but do a lot of the same things. You watch a really good teacher, they know how to engage these kids. They know just how hard to push. You push too hard, you drive them into sensory overload. You don't push enough, they don't go ahead. So parents will say, well, if I got the right program. First of all, ideally for a 2-year-old or 3-year-old, about 10 hours a week of one-on-one teaching they should be getting with an effective teacher. Effective teacher. Speech, turn-taking, skills. That's what you want. That's what, and I always say to parents, is the child making progress? I don't really care what the name of the program is. In fact, in animal welfare right now, we're all outcome-based. Okay, you gotta make sure your cattle don't get lame. It's not very good for their welfare. You see, that's outcome-based. There's a lot of controversy about ABA and applied behavior analysis. There was old-fashioned, really awful programs where some of the advocates were driven into sensory overload. They were just forced into, you know, noisy things. That was not done with me. I was not forced to ride on that ferry, you know, under that horn. No, I rode in the cabin underneath. They made an accommodation for that. But early intervention is really important. But, you know, it's never too late. There's been some recluses in the basement playing video games. where they were weaned off of it, and they went into the car mechanics field, and they are car mechanics. Yeah, I'm a big fan for the visual thinkers like me, fixing mechanical things, building things. We have a huge need for people with those skills, and those jobs are AI proof. I forget about the video game design. AI is going to eat that up. They'll absolutely eat that up. But people still have to fix mechanical things. That's not going to go away. And I asked one of the adults why they gave up the video games, and he said, motors get a lot more interesting. Even something like changing oil in cars, as long as you've got a lot of different cars, then it's interesting. But we just can't be letting these kids not get early intervention. We're gonna just have to, gotta get the retired teachers working on them. Okay, right here.
Hi. You've kind of answered this question, but I'm going to ask it again in a different way. What's the most important thing that you would want parents to know about raising a person with autism?
First of all, I'm going to have to split it into age groups. The question was, what's the most important thing for working with a person with autism? The first question I have to ask is age. Is it an early intervention kid that's under age 5? Elementary school student, teenager or adult? First of all, I just got to get an age range. I don't need the exact age. Okay, then what's the problem? Does he speak? What is the problem? I have to get a lot more information. Now, there's certain things that I've learned. Vagueness doesn't work. Let's say I'm job coaching, for example, with an adult, telling them that they're rude to colleagues, that doesn't work. You have to be very specific. Well, when I criticized some welding in a really rude way on my very first project, I said it looked like pigeon doo-doo. And the plant engineer called me in his office and said, you're going to have to apologize for that rude talk. That's not acceptable talk. And he made me go up to the cafeteria and apologize. He also explained the chain of command, that if I didn't like the welding, I should have come to him because the welder was his employee. He explained to me quietly what to do. And in the 50s, this is also called teachable moment. Like if I stirred my drink with my finger, a lot of parents would say, no. What you do is give the instruction. Use the spoon. People think it's disgusting when you use your finger. You give the instruction and the reason. Yeah, instead of screaming no. I call that teachable moments. That's another thing. But vagueness doesn't work with autistic individuals. Well, you're rude. I think a lot of these grandparents ended up getting good jobs because in my generation, social rules were taught. We were cued. You forgot to say please. You forgot to say thank you. There was a lot of emphasis on this, and when in the 50s and 60s. That's another reason why the grandparents, got jobs, because social rules were taught. See, things like going to party hosts and hostess. It's interesting, Bill Gates and I had to do exactly the same thing. But where we separated is Bill Gates and I both had access to the exact same IBM computer. I'm a little older, so it was a college course for me. I had dropped the course, couldn't do it. He was climbing out his bedroom window at age 12 and sneaking into the university lab and took off with it. You see, that's where I'm not a mathematical mind, he was. That's where we're different. But the early social upbringing, very similar. Yeah, we need to be doing more of these. These things are not complicated. The sensory stuff, I have to find things that don't itch. I still have some problems with that. Some tips, wash a lot of clothes before you wear them. That's going to help. You're not going to get wool against my skin. A lot of these Western shirts that wear t-shirts under them that have been washed. I never wear a new t-shirt. Break out a rash from that. So again, those are simple things that you can do. Help with some of the sensory stuff. Another thing is flicker on LED lights. And some LED lights flicker. And that bothers people with head injuries. Also, some people get migraines. And the way you can tell if the light flickers, take some slow motion video with your phone. Another thing that oftentimes helps with reading, and nobody knows why this works, is that some people, when they go to read, complain about the print jiggling on the page. And sometimes if you take colored paper, like light blue paper, light gray paper, light tan paper, they pick out the color that's right for them and the print stops jiggling. Nobody knows why this works. Now, one of the problems you have with evidence-based is it's only a subtype of dyslexia which works. But when it works like magic. It's colored paper, it can't possibly hurt you. So you might as well try it. It costs anything to try it. And when it works, I've seen it really work. And we do have a book over in the bookstore called Temple Grandin, The Girl Loves Cows. It's printed on pastel paper. I have seen people pick that book up at the book table and go, I can read, when they get the right pastel paper. That's another simple thing. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. The way I look at evidence-based, if it's expensive, dangerous, or takes you weeks and months to try it, yeah, I got an evidence-based. Colored paper takes sometimes 5 seconds to try it. And it can't possibly hurt you. So those are just a few little tips. Okay, we got somebody over here, or? Okay, I can't. Oh, right over there. Okay, I see it. I see it. Okay.
What's the most difficult thing you had to deal with when a person is autism?
You're gonna have to come up here. You're gonna have to just talk to me without the mic. There's reverberation, and I can't hear. You know, this is what we don't like about the ceiling. You put some sound attenuation in here. Hang some panels, sound absorbing panels off this trusses up here, and you get rid of the reverberation. It's not that expensive. Just make sure they're fireproof. Okay, you just come up here and ask a question, and then I'll repeat it. Okay? What's the most important? Okay, the question was, what was the most difficult thing I had to deal with? The most difficult thing as a teenager, the worst part of my life, was bullying and teasing. That was absolutely the worst thing I had to deal with. And the only places I was not bullied, whereas I had friends through shared interests. You know, I mean, it was horseback riding and the model rocket club. For another kid, it might be the school thing. Can't emphasize enough, friends through shared interests. And I just heard a horror story just the other day in grade school. This would have been like 4th grade. That this one girl that was bullying a kid named Camila started a We Hate Camila club. And this is just the other day I heard this. And the whole class was against her. Why did the teachers do something about that? That was right now that happened. It was just awful. You know, I thought maybe we were beyond some of that stuff now. I managed to get to grade school, the elementary school, without being bullied, because my teacher explained to the other students that I had a disability that was not visible like a wheelchair or crutches. And that's called peer-mediated intervention. And then you get the other kids to help, not torture. And I have a paper, there's a free open access you might want to look up. How horses help the teenager with autism make friends and learn how to work. Might want to look at that. Also, if you're wondering what I do with my speaking engagement money and my book money, I have put 25 graduate students through master's and PhD programs in animal science. Now, both Bill Gates and I were taught to give back. That was the one thing we were both taught, what he did for the medical field. Taught to give back. I remember in my church they had a manger with presents on it. I remember each kid had to give a present for a poor child, and they said it's better to give than to receive. I never forgot that. You give back. And I really liked what was said there at the beginning with the rabbi there in the very on the slide. I really liked that. Yeah, we need to have more of that kind of sentiment. Teenage years, worst part of my life. Absolutely the worst. Okay, right there. Yeah, maybe I can hear you okay.
Dr. Grandin, several years ago, I saw a program where you were involved with farmers.
All right, can't hear you. I'm sorry. We're going to have to come up to the front here. I'm sorry. I do, especially if I've gotten older, this has gotten worse. Okay, there's reverberation and I can't hear You're gonna have to come up here and tell me, and I'll repeat the question. Okay, the question was, this has a cattle question. Well, first of all, to get into the whole cattle thing, you're asking about cattle stuff. The whole cattle interest started as a teenager. This brings up the really important thing of exposure. I came from a completely non-agricultural background. Then when I went out to my aunt's ranch, I got exposed to cattle. I also got fascinated with cattle squeeze shoes, the thing for holding cattle when you vaccinate them. And a lot of autistics are calmed by deep pressure, so I built a squeezing machine. And it also helped desensitize me because I could control it. See, this element of control is really important. But then I got kind of really concerned about, all the things we were doing to cattle. And I wanted to answer the question, they're afraid of getting slaughtered. So I made my own self-made internship at the Swift plant, sort of like what Steven Spielberg did, except I met a person who knew the plant manager at a Arizona stock show party. Yeah, press pass was involved in that. And I started going to the Swift plant, and the cattle seemed to just walk in quietly. And when I went down to the feed yard, they behaved the same way. Now, if you look at the research, the stress is about the same going into the chute at the feed yard for vaccinations than at the slaughter line. But I had to answer that question. And I've got a lot of stuff on my website about this. I started designing better facilities. And one of the mistakes I made very early in my career is I thought I could build a self-managing cattle handling facility. No, you can't. I can build a cattle handling facility that works better than a lousy one, but that doesn't replace management. And management making sure that people do things right. I call it wanting the thing more than the management. And I get asked, what's the thing I've done in animal welfare I was super proud of? And I was super proud of developing a very simple way to assess slaughterhouses, and then teaching McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's how to use it. And when big buyers inspect things really improve. And I'm very proud of the fact that out of 74 McDonald's suppliers, only 3 had to buy expensive equipment. All of the rest of it was repairs, maintenance, non-slip flooring, training, and 3 plant managers fired. I learned a lot from that. But people always want the magical thing. Oh, the new computer, artificial intelligence, put internet to schools, it's going to fix the schools. That didn't fix the schools. No, you need people that are imaginative, and the good things you're doing here, you need to put it up on an open website, no login, nothing, and books. And write about how to do it. I see so many innovative things in education, and they're all getting lost. Nobody wrote it up. They hold on to their intellectual property. Oh, I published the crowds on Grandin.com and gave them away. I had plenty of consulting work. I made plenty of money. Okay, that was it. Which we need to finish that.